Speaking of which, WMPG is on the air thanks to donations from our listeners and through grant support from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. The CPB promotes the growth and development of public media in communities throughout America. Online at cpb.org. And a gander at the weather before we begin with Nonprofit Insider. It's 54 degrees right now in Portland, mostly cloudy, but I see a fair amount of blue sky here at WMPG's Weather Central. Looks like the sun's going to set around 5:33, and then the clouds are going to roll in force. We got a rainy Saturday and Sunday coming up. Temperatures no higher than the mid-40s on Saturday and Sunday, going down into the 30s on both nights. Monday and Tuesday, the sun returns. Temperatures going back up into the 40s. Here we go. So, Nonprofit Insider.
Driving, music's blaring in my ears. Engines roaring, the horizon's drawing near. Pedal to the floor, no more feet in the door. Gonna drive right out of this bitter night. I'm a constant seeker in conversation.
Welcome to Nonprofit Insider. My name is David Unger, and I'm pleased to be hosting a show with executive directors and key people of local nonprofits. I've worked in the nonprofit world for over 30 years. In those years, I've realized that the majority of the community does not know about the organizations that provide critical services and benefits to our community we sometimes take for granted. Nonprofit Insider is a chance to hear about the organizations that touch so many in our community. The opinions expressed on Nonprofit Insider are not necessarily those of WMPG, its staff and underwriters, or of USM. Today we have a very, very special guest with us today, Deb. Do you want to know who it is?
I do.
It's me.
Yeah! Woo! 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 Well, you do work cheap.
I know. Scheduling guests to come in every week is really a lot of fun, but when you have a cancellation like we did a couple weeks ago and we move people around every once in a while, we find a gap in the weekly schedule. So this gives us a chance to kind of sit back and kick back and talk about things that are on our mind.
I think that's a great idea. You've done a lot since coming on in late spring.
I know.
An awful lot has happened.
It has, and it's been a great experience. But I'd love to hear from you, our listeners. You can call us in at 780-4909. But to get started, you've been pushing me since we started this that every once in a while I should sit back, kick up my heels, and give my perspective of what's going on.
Please do. I mean, why don't you tell the listener, in case they've forgotten, a little bit about your background, just a little bit, just so they know from whence you are coming.
Oh,
I like that word, whence.
Whence.
And then please tell us whatever you want to tell us.
Does that come with a bowl of borscht?
If you like, yeah. Okay. Russian borscht.
Okay. I've been in the nonprofit world since 1970. I've worked my way up through the ranks and the systems, and I eventually became an executive director in Pennsylvania. We've moved all over the country and have been part of the nonprofit world, and we came here in 96, and I took an executive director position here. In 2003, I woke up one morning and said I quit, and I went into consulting. So I've been consulting for nonprofits throughout the state in northern New England since 2003. And I was on the board of WMPG about a year and a half ago for 2 years, and the person who always sat next to me and kept hitting me in the ribs saying you ought to do a show is you. So here I am, and it really has been a great experience. Besides, I'm learning so much about other organizations that I really didn't have much contact with. And there's a lot of stuff going on right now. And I guess the biggest thing on my mind, or the biggest thing I'm trying to grapple with, is obviously Tuesday's the election for governor, and there's 3 candidates running. And the amount of negative advertising that has been going on, and to me, it misses the whole point of what this is all about. What are the issues that are affecting people? And I'd love to hear what our listeners have to say about this. So as I keep, bantering on here, you can call in at 780-4909 and give us your thoughts. But, it really hit home for me last week. I was having coffee with this young gentleman, probably 24, 25. He's developmentally disabled. And we were just sitting there talking, and I was asking him about the elections. And, he's concerned about a lot of things. And when you think about it, the people that we're electing into office are making decisions, life and death decisions, about people who cannot necessarily support themselves in all kinds of different arenas. So I asked this young man, I said, do you have a job? And he said, no. And I said, do you want a job? And he said, yes. And we started talking about it. And, I've done a lot of hiring in my career, and I think this young man is employable. I mean, it has to be a very specific type of job, but he is employable. And I said to him, so if you're not working, how much money do you have a month to spend? And he looked at me and said, $12. Okay. And this is after, his housing costs and everything else. But he has $12 of cash.
Of discretionary income.
That he can put into his pocket and go out with. And he has no opportunity to improve his life and to make things better for himself. So he's in a day program. And, the day program, you would think, would help create skill sets and provide opportunities for this individual to make a better life for themselves. And he's 24, 25. And I said, so what do you do in your day program? And he said, arts and crafts projects. And here we are talking about state government, the leader of our state, millions of dollars into DHHS and other organizations to support folks. And all we hear about are negative ads. And, why this one shouldn't get it versus here's what the proposal that I have that I put on the table. And in all honesty, and again, these are my opinions and my opinions alone and nobody else's, there's only been one person who's actually put a plan on the table with a dollar amount of how much it's going to cost and how it's going to get done. And nobody has been addressing that. And that just bothers me.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's the whole piece of fear again. That people are afraid. They want to instill fear in you of what could be versus what it should be. Did that make sense?
I was going to say more about that. I mean, because I can go off on my own tangent, but I want to know what you mean by that.
Change has to happen. Something's wrong with the system somewhere. Okay? So how do you begin proposing the change? How do you begin putting it out there and engaging people to have ownership in the change process? It could be a government, it could be at an agency. And if you think about it, one of the first things that I learned in social work school was, okay, you are a change agent. As a social worker, your job is to make change.
Right.
And the key is how you develop that ownership with your constituents and your partners and everybody involved so the change is agreed upon. So if we look at the election right now, and again, this is my opinion, if we look at all the advertising in the elections, it's not talking about change for the positive and how it's going to improve our lives or the lives of people who depend on the systems. But it talks about the individuals and how bad or everything that they've done wrong.
Right. Right.
What's your opinion?
Well, I think it's the classic blaming the victim.
Oh, no question.
Classic
no question.
blaming the victim. So, why are we still having that discussion?
I don't know. I think it's, I don't think it's just in Maine. I think it's throughout the entire country because you look at the negative ads and it's all about beating up an individual and taking it from there. So I don't know. Oh, someone's calling? Hello?
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, it's Brian from Wyndham. How you doing?
Good. How are you today?
Not too bad. I got a direct comment about this whole scare tactic that's going on in politics.
Go.
Okay, basically, my uncle has a saying that when emotion comes in the door, common sense and logic goes out the window. And when people are reacting emotionally, they're very easily led and misled. And so people are out there being scared so that they'll do what they're told. For example, just this whole thing about the Ebola up in Fort Kent. There is no Ebola. She has not got it. She's not contagious, not showing symptoms, and yet they want to confine her against her will for several weeks. And they're all reacting emotionally. All the medical people and the scientists say it's not contagious at this point. She doesn't have it. It's only on these particular points is it contagious, and yet they're saying everyone's going to get hurt.
No
They have
question.
a teacher up in Strong who was put on paid administrative leave after going to Dallas
Right, but
at their behest,
how do
just
we?
because there's someone there who had it, and she was nowhere near him.
No question. But again, how does the scare tactics that we're talking about really affect the people who need the services that we're trying to improve the lives of? So,
It affects it because it's prohibiting them from getting the help they need.
right,
They're getting everybody serving the people who have the scare tactics. They want to have attention spent someplace and money spent someplace else, and yet not on what's needed in order to enable people. When you enable them, you're giving them power. And people in power don't want to share the power.
I think that's one of the key things that we're talking about. It's the sharing of power, and how does that power get translated and partnered to improve the lives of individuals? Thanks for the call.
You're welcome. Good subject.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, it's not an isolated situation. It's something that's going on throughout the country right now. I was with someone at dinner last night, and they said there's probably more news media in Fort Kent than people who live in the town right now. And the big question was, where's everybody sleeping with all these?
It's a good question.
It is.
And it's hunting season up there too, isn't it?
Oh, that's right.
Jeez.
I mean, so even in terms of some of the local and the state elections, it's not about the issues anymore. It's about the individuals that are involved. And it's become emotional, as our caller just said, and personal.
Right.
And
It's
that-
like a cult of personality, actually. I mean, when you think of a certain candidate, you think of a whole bunch of attributes that have nothing to do with his or her position and have everything to do with image.
Right. And to be honest with you, and I follow the elections probably a little more than the average person,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the issues are.
Right.
What are the issues that people stand for that would make them a better representative of the people?
And yet you know who you're going to vote for.
Right.
Right. Isn't that? Yeah, you're right. It's bizarre.
It is. It is. And, the sad part about it is the people who are affected the most are the ones who usually aren't the ones who are out there talking about it.
Right. Or the one, you're absolutely right. I'm getting a little hot on the collar here.
I couldn't tell.
Yeah, because that's exactly true. Where do these people stand? And at the role of nonprofits, you've been discussing this for 6 or 7 months. You've been showing us with all the different executive directors that you've had on, exactly what nonprofits do for the quality of life here in Maine. And yet,
Yeah, I mean, going back to our interview last week with my teen place, Donna was explaining that there's a person panhandling and her daughter was in her program. And the daughter didn't know how to smile. And the nonprofits are really trying to make that change.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of being a partner with our elected officials and our leadership, it becomes more adversarial because you're always fighting with them about something.
right. And we're not even talking about getting to the root causes of of this stuff. What we're talking about is now that we're here, we're somewhere on a path and trying to help, folks live a better life on this path. We're not talking about the root causes of this stuff at all.
No.
Which scares some people away.
All right. Well, this is our midpoint identifier, and every week at this time, I ask our guest our trivia question.
So you can ask yourself the trivia question today?
No, I'm going to ask you.
Oh, dear.
This
Oh,
one's
dear.
really difficult.
Oh, of course it is.
You ready?
James Madison?
How'd you know? Our trivia question is, and you're not allowed to give the answer till after the midpoint identifier, what is the official state insect. Do, 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 do. And it's not the mosquito. This is WMPG 90.9 and 104.1 FM, community radio of Southern Maine and Eastern New Hampshire. And my guest didn't show up today, so I'm the guest. Okay, Deb.
All right. Well,
what is the state official state?
The official, not the
state
unofficial.
Insect.
Oh my goodness. Well, I know it's not the bed bug. Okay, so it's I'm going to say it's probably one of those helpful agricultural insects. I'm thinking maybe it's I'm sure it's green and it's got multiple legs.
Nope. It flies.
It's not the black fly.
No, it's the honeybee.
Of course. That was my second guess, the honeybee.
And that answer was officially according to 50states.com. So that was
So I wasn't too far off with James Madison then.
No. So this is going to be really interesting on Wednesday morning when we wake up. Either it's going to be the same, there's going to be some change, or there's going to be some major change.
So if you were running, say your first name was Mike, and you were going to get elected on Tuesday because
Or
everybody's
my name could be
because everybody's going out to vote.
my
on
name
Tuesday.
could be Elliot.
And if your name was Mike, what would
Maybe Mike's my middle name.
all right. Well, I think we have to agree to disagree here, folks. But tell what would your platform be? What would you want to do on day one?
I would start with the word transparency. Okay, we are in this together. We live here, we work here, we have our families here, and too many things are being decided and talked about behind closed doors. I have the good, bad, or indifferent fortune of working with the state right now on multiple levels. And there are some great people working in the system, but the system is tying their hands. So there's got to be a way of communicating and having transparency and giving government back to the people in many different ways. And that's where I see, they bring people in, they're going to have these meetings, they have these town meetings, they have these conference calls. But what actually changes from those? Do they actually listen, or do they go through the process because the grant says they have to do that?
Is change possible in such a big bureaucracy?
Yes. Change is always possible. One of my favorite quotes, the only constant is change itself.
Well, time is change. I believe that. But I'm thinking about I'm thinking about the state. The nonprofit I work for, we deal with HUD. And a chortle goes up through the crowd. And so, change, there's a lot of superficial change, but I don't, it's hard to
Change is a grassroots concept. You have to start at the beginning with a group of people who want to make the change.
So how does a governor, or if his name is Mike, for example, say how would he start off with? How would he support change? That kind of root change that you're talking about.
So, if my name was Elliot, the first thing that I would do would be to begin understanding what the issues are. Okay, and that means maybe you talk to the people in the communities. Maybe you talk to the people who are receiving the services. And there's all kinds of ways that you begin doing these assessments to begin to understand what those changes are. Now, I know at least one of the candidates has done a lot of that legwork already in the book that he's written, to talk about how this change would happen. And it's a matter of getting people to buy in and have ownership. I'd love to hear our listeners' views on this. So please call in at 780-4909.
We have time for one more call. We'd love to hear from you.
Or maybe two if it's a short call and we hang up on the person.
Yeah, that's true. That's a possibility, David. 780-4909, area code 207. So, okay, so you'd have the governor start off having a conversation with people who are trying to make change and who are affected by the possible change.
Yes.
And you'd have, so it'd be like a fact-finding thing. And then what would be the next step? To support that change that he finds valuable somehow using his office?
Again, it's putting the right people on your team to get the ownership and get people to trust what you're going to do. And if you say you're going to do it, you do it. We had the opportunity at the Speaking Up for Us statewide conference a couple weeks ago. One of the candidates did come and speak. We invited all three. And he actually gave an extremely powerful message, and I never thought about it like this. He was encouraging everybody to go out and vote, and everybody has the responsibility to vote. And he said, no matter who you are, if you're disabled or not, no matter what your income is, when you go into that voting booth, you close the curtain, you have as much power as the most influential person in the state. Your one vote is that power. And people need to vote with what their conscience is to make the right decision and not be afraid if we do this and this and this and this will happen.
Well, it feels like voting one's conscience means going almost against common sense. And if you go against, if you go with common sense, you're voting against your conscience.
Not necessarily. Some people has conscience does follow common sense.
I'm thinking specifically about this election. It's like, if one is voting against someone else, You
mean you're voting for somebody so somebody else would
exactly as a block vote, and so to follow one's conscience, one might vote for the, somebody who doesn't have much of a chance, thereby, de facto voting for the person that's already in power.
Yeah, but think about it like this: if the majority of the people are voting because they're saying they don't want one person in versus the other, and they all vote for the person who they think could do the right job, then the right person will be elected.
But that's a change that that's a massive change in the way things are done. That would be almost like knowing. That would be almost like knowing where their positions are instead of knowing what their auras are like.
Right. And I think when we go into the voting booth on Tuesday, we need to think about who's going to be the best leader for the state, and being the leader for the state is also the caretaker for the people who can't take care of themselves, as we've found there's so many in our state based on the interviews that we've had over the last 8 months.
Absolutely.
It's from the environmentalists to the land trusts to the social service agencies, and whoever takes the spot at the Blaine House is going to affect people that we've been talking to and about.
Absolutely. I'm already depressed.
I'm
very depressed. How are folks feeling out there? I mean, are you depressed, or are you excited about the possibility of having change in the Blaine House or the status quo? Give us a call, 780-4909. We'd love to hear from you. So, David, all right, so that's what you would do. You'd talk to people, and you'd figure it all out, and you'd hire good people that would be able to support, your mission and so forth and so on. But, what the role of nonprofits in Maine seems to be almost like another branch of, it's a social its own branch of social services that aren't really monitored by the government. What is the government's role in nonprofit, the state government's role?
That varies, okay, because you have some nonprofits that are 100% dependent on the state and federal funding, and you have some nonprofits who don't receive a penny. So,
is there any regulatory, regardless of where the funding comes from, is there any regulatory aspect to the state government does on the nonprofits?
Oh yeah,
that sentence lost its mind, but I think
they have
you know
to
what I mean.
send in countless number of reports, and they have to show how all their objectives are met, and they have to. I just finished one for a client, their year-end, fourth quarter year-end report, and it's massive. I wonder who reads this stuff. And, if they catch something, what do? How do they deal with it? And could that be streamlined? And, when I work with people on data management systems, the big question I ask is, do you want to spend your time managing the data, or do you want to use the data to help you raise more money? And that's something that we need to begin thinking about, is how systems regulate themselves.
Yep. You want to say something?
And it's something that we have to begin looking at from the inside out and outside in. I think we have a caller. Hello? Hello? Are you still there, or did Deb hang up on you? I think Deb hung up on her.
Well, I didn't really hang up on her. I think she might have just hung up.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that, caller.
Well, call back again.
Yeah, we have a few more minutes. I'm sorry.
That's it. So it's really a very, very hard issue to grapple with. But
right.
At some point it has to be grappled with, rather than just go in and say, we're going to cut services. Okay, what kind of evaluative process happens when we go in and talk about these services? And what do we do to make sure that the impact is going to be as minimal as possible?
All right, hang on.
Okay, I think the caller came back. Let's not hang up on him, Deb. Oh, did I just get a look? Hello?
Hi there.
Hi.
Yeah, I did come back. So, hi there. Let me just turn my radio. I'm in my car. I think that must be the part of the problem. Hi there.
Hi.
Can you still hear me?
Yes, we only have about a minute, so.
Okay. Well, I wanted to just mention one thing, and that is, what concerns me a lot is once somebody gets elected, how do we hold them responsible, and how do we hold them to do the things that they say they're actually going to do? Like when President Obama was elected, he probably wanted to do a lot more than he was able to do because of the freaking corporations that we're all bound to somehow. That seems like the government is bound to. If you could speak to that, that would be great. Thank you so much. I love what you're doing. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, part of it is the election itself. Candidates can run again and be reelected. And if we don't like their job, then we don't reelect them. But it's all part of the process. And I think that goes back to the transparency piece, that people have to be able to understand that they're not perfect, and they have to rely on a strong team to make decisions and be part of that ownership. Thanks for the call. Well, I hope folks got something out of the show. I certainly did. Next week, we have Dennis King, CEO and board member, and Pringle, board member of Maine Behavioral Healthcare. The music appears courtesy of Mike Hubbard. You can find it on www.michaelhubbardmusic.com. Check out Mike's website.